Well, last week we told you about the Red Cross critical need for blood, especially during these cold winter months. Now, if you didn't know, the Red Cross provides about 40% of our country's blood and blood components, all from donors. LifeFlight of Maine is the only nonprofit air ambulance that carries blood in our state. I stopped by the Bangor hangar to hear how blood donations make a difference in their patients.
LifeFlight 1 and LifeFlight 3's medical team.
For more than 25 years, LifeFlight of Maine has been ensuring people in the state have access to critical care when and where they need it. Based at hospitals, LifeFlight is a mobile intensive care system staffed by trained nurses and paramedics. Staff are equipped with the best medical technology of an ICU. They carry other devices like ventilators and medications. Also on board, universal donor blood. They're the only EMS service in the state allowed to initiate blood and plasma therapies.
We carry 3 different blood products. We carry O positive, O negative, and never frozen plasma that we get from Eastern Maine Medical Center.
LifeFlight carries blood on every single transport, and for some patients, donated blood is the difference between life and death.
We have controls that are in place to help us maintain that it's cool, that it's safe, and that it's ready to go.
When people are losing blood, that's really what they need. You can buy some time with other products like saline or other fluids, but if they need blood, they actually need blood.
Chuck Hogan serves as the Chief Clinical Officer for LifeFlight. He says they've always been able to carry the amount of blood they've requested. However, that would not be made possible if it weren't for blood donors.
Makes a big, big difference in the care that we provide.
LifeFlight has also transported blood in times of need. Following the mass shootings in Lewiston back in October, a LifeFlight airplane took off from Bangor with medical supplies, including blood products.
We can bring those resources, whether it's blood, which often is crucial, or medications, or even potentially a specialist that we can help bring to those situations and help them in those dire circumstances where they are.
Being a nonprofit, LifeFlight relies not just on monetary donations, but blood donations as well. They're calling on everyone who can to donate blood now to help alleviate the shortage.
At the end of the day, you can feel good that you've done something to really make a difference in someone that needs that.